Archie's TV laugh out issue 86. Hilda wonders what all the yelling outside her house is about, and she complains about kids playing ball on her front lawn. Sabrina explains that these are some kids she babysits sometimes. A kid tramples her flower bed, and she wants to put a stop to this for that, being naturally upset about it. Why did Sabrina tell them they could play there? Hilda uses magic to summon a giant dog, so they wonder where he came from. Sabrina has to zap it away, and realistically they wonder where it went, and she invites them inside for soda and cookies. Hilda points out that they shouldn't be rewarded for ruining her flowers. She could always use magic to fix them, but she doesn't like having to go through the effort of doing that, so she still have a reason to be mad, feeling sorry for the flowers. The kid describes the dog to Sabrina and moves the cup upwards and to the side while saying he was this big, and that easily causes the soda to splash in Hilda's face. How would he do that by accident? Why would he move his arm up with the soda? Hilda summons the dog again to scare them into running away and gets knocked over by a kid. Sabrina helps her up and tells her to be nice to them so they'll be nice to her. It is good advice. It's not like they're intentionally bothering her. She tells Hilda to give them some ice cream instead. The kid thanks her for it, offers her a rose he picked, which logically would have been from this very yard since he had it right away. He should have known better. Somehow she doesn't realize that and get mad. At least that was a happy ending, and then she's stung from a bee from it, and the story ends, leading to a broken S-up. This story was about Sabrina urging Hilda to be nice to some kids that are trampling her flowers in her yard, because Sabrina somehow decided telling them to play in her front yard was a good idea. The kids weren't intentionally inconveniencing Hilda, so I understand Sabrina telling her to be nice and merciful, but you end up siding with Hilda as well. And eventually Hilda gets stung by a bee because of them. So it's hard to see which side I'm supposed to be on. Archie Giant Series 519. Sabrina tells Hilda they've been invited to a fancy tea party by an upper-class family. Why were they invited? How would they know those people? I guess through Veronica. Sabrina tells Hilda to dress for the occasion, but Hilda doesn't know what people would normally wear to a tea party. It makes a guess that people would wear t-shirts to them. That was actually pretty amusing. I liked how proud she was of that decision, and it looked white like a guy's t-shirt. Archie Giant Series 521. Sabrina's on a picnic with her aunts for once, and she says she hates mosquitoes. Hilda takes care of them by spraying the air so that a genie shows up and swats them. I really smiled at that. I liked how goofy looking the genie was. You'd think she'd just point and create mosquito spray though. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 88. For once, Midge and Sabrina have a conversation together. Predictably, Midge is complaining about how jealous Moose is. No guy in school can even look at her. Sabrina feels sorry for her and uses magic to make him stop threatening Archie. So Moose puts his hand on his shoulder and tells him he can call Midge anytime he wants, which is not what Sabrina would imagine him to say. She'd just want him to stop threatening any guys that even talk to her. She's smart enough to ask him if he doesn't feel well. So Reggie asks her out and Moose gives him permission and puts his hand on his shoulder. Then out of nowhere, Archie asks out Midge as well. What about Veronica? I never thought the only thing keeping him from dating her was Moose. I always thought he wasn't interested in her. Midge gets mad, asking Moose if he's sick or fell down the stairs and hit his head. I just feel bad for him because she doesn't appreciate this. She accuses him of not caring about her anymore and already misses the old him and wonders if there's someone else he loves. So when he says he loves everybody, Sabrina turns him back to normal. And Midge is relieved at him threatening Reggie and Archie. So I'm expected to believe that she secretly likes it this way. At least compared to the alternative. This story addressed the question of, why doesn't Sabrina use magic to make Moose stop being a jealous boyfriend? It turns out it's because Midge wouldn't appreciate it. I like seeing him so nice and lenient, even if it was forced that he outright told people they could ask Midge out if they wanted to. It'd feel more natural if they just did it without knowing he was there first. It was just frustrating seeing Midge get mad at Moose about this and accuse him of cheating on her and not caring about her anymore. At least one of the reasons the spell backfired was because of a realistic consequence, that Midge got suspicious. And Sabrina should have seen that coming. What did Sabrina just make him not want to hurt people because of Midge anymore? She could have erased memories and tried the spell again in a way that was less extreme. Everything's Archie 105. Sabrina says Ambrose gave her a magic mirror for her birthday. It tells Sabrina she's the fairest of them all, so it must just be saying that because Ambrose told it to. Of course it cracks when it sees Hilda. Ambrose must have cast a spell so it'd do that, and then repair itself. Archie's girls Betty and Veronica 323, easy does it. Sabrina's impatient to get started making a brew with Hilda because, out of nowhere, it turns out that it's usually a 3-day job. I remember Zelda making an antidote to a magical sundae in like an instant, but that was in Little Sabrina. Hilda says they're in the age of fast foods, and tells her to hand her one of the large can openers as she's got a big can of Old Salem brand witch's food. The page is acting as if this is a new thing, but why would it be? Archie 323. Hilda wonders where a big cauldron is. You know, as opposed to our small cauldrons we know about. Then she finds out that Sabrina and Ambrose are eating popcorn from it. Life with Archie 1958 236. Picture perfect. Hilda brags that she's using an enchanted camera. The pictures come out looking the way the subject imagines she looks. Logically, the subject would imagine that he looks the way he actually does. Unless it's been a very long time since he looked at his reflection. Even not having a mirror doesn't explain Hilda getting a beautiful picture. She at least admits that this photo's strange, so she knows she doesn't look like that. I guess she means that it takes a picture depending on the person's vanity, and by witch standards, this is how Hilda looks to other witches. But if witches think that ugly is beautiful, then she would think this photo is ugly. Laugh Comics 377. Ambrose is sad because Hilda wants him to go to the witches' reunion. Is that like all of those witches' conventions? It was always implied that they had no choice but to go to those. So this one must be voluntary. Why doesn't he brainwash Hilda so that she'll let him go to the hockey game he bought tickets for? I just have to assume that he's morally opposed to it. But that shouldn't be left to assumption when it's the whole reason for the plot. He says only nosy busybodies go to those reunions and talk all evening long. That's generally what people do at parties. He wouldn't like any party then, and I wouldn't imagine that of him. Hilda wants Ambrose to represent the family. Since when? I'd imagine Hilda would want to represent the family. Sabrina tells Ambrose to just tell Hilda he's not going. She'd know that Hilda would just use magic on him, or at least complain endlessly. She says women like men who take charge. He says he's not going, and she interrupts him. It seems like he never intended to give her an excuse for it. So no wonder she got mad. She insists that he'd let the family down, and zaps him. He runs away from her instead of simply warping away. Even if he did, she'd warp him to the reunion. I assume that a witch that isn't the head witch can't take away a witch's powers because that'd be too overpowered and easy to abuse. Unless the witch that's getting their powers removed is a mortal that a witch told Dell to get powers to. She says she'll take his tickets. I guess she's morally opposed to brainwashing Hilda too. This was a story where Ambrose doesn't want to go to a witch's meeting when Hilda insists on it. And Sabrina feels so bad for him that she gets the desperate idea that he'll be allowed to say he's not going because she'd like him to take charge, even though Hilda's always been a take charge person. She should have known Hilda would use magic until she'd get her way. Of course Ambrose could have used magic on Hilda to make her change her mind and let him go to the hockey game. So the only way the story could make sense is if he thought it'd be awful to do that to a relative. Archie's TV Laugh Out, issue 89. Sabrina tells Hilda that sundown is too late to hold a garage sale. Hilda says that's normal for a witch's garage sale, and we see other witches there. So rather than it being an idiot ball, she had a reason to do this. The witches don't want nosy mortals at the garage sale, of course, so it's easier to hold it at sundown. Predictably, the witches are still gonna have to deal with mortals, because a woman notices the garage sale. There's an unexpected joke because her husband says they've already been to a dozen sales today. So they're rich, and Harriet's got a shopping addiction. She tells him to give her a boost, and she sees the garage sale over the fence where someone wants to buy Hilda's microwave cauldron. Harriet climbs into the yard and says she's interested in any kind of sale because she likes bargains. Conveniently not asking about the fact that there's people dressed like witches here for no apparent reason to her, because she's just that polite. Ambrose could just brainwash her into leaving at this point. So I have to assume that the reason he doesn't and avoid this whole plot is politeness. She says that this looks like an enchanted mirror, and the mirror insults her appearance, calling her a battle axe of all things. And she comes to the logical conclusion that there's a ventriloquist in the crowd. And we see a sign saying Haunted Dollhouse. I assume the ghosts are friendly and that's why they're there. Hilda gets offered money for a 3-speed broom. I wish the woman's thought bubble said something like, it must be an automatic broom. Because that's the only scientific conclusion she'd come to about why the words 3-speed were said. She assumes it must be a valuable antique rather than assuming that it's so expensive because it's a 3-speed broom. She takes the broom out of Hilda's hand easily because apparently her grip sucks. Predictably, the broom makes her rocket into the air, which makes no sense because it wasn't being told to do that. Oh, Hilda explains that her snapping her fingers was what told the broom to take off. That's at least better than how it usually is, but it's completely contradictory to the whole series because we never see any witch snap her fingers to make a broom take off. Also, she had no reason to snap her fingers anyways. She still wasn't imagining the broom flying. Hilda casts a spell telling the broom to come on down, and Harriet's passed out. Hilda says she'll revive her with her special brew. It makes sense that witches would have a potion for that. They'd have one for everything. And it's surprisingly nice of her to even consider helping her wake up when she started out as just a typical evil witch. But she has to be awake to get freaked out some more, so it makes sense either way. I like that she says the brew is delicious. Predictably, it's mentioned that it's made of witch-style ingredients, and when Hilda amusingly says she put a dozen giant bat wings in it, while holding a bat wing as proof, the woman runs away screaming. Predictably, this experience caused her to quit going to garage sales. So her husband thanks Hilda and shakes her hand as she and Ambrose smile. I like that happy ending. This story was about the chaos that ensues when a mortal goes to a witch garage sale. And apparently every witch is too polite and against brainwashing to brainwash her into leaving. I like that Hilda took the extra effort of making it happen at night, so she at least tried to make it a secret. There are rummage sales taking place far away from your front yard, so she could have made a rummage sale in the other realm. And I like that the story also went through the extra effort of explaining that the reason someone went to a garage sale at night is that she's addicted to shopping and will go to any garage sale. So the story went out of its way to try and make more sense, when it could have easily been lazy and had it take place during the day and had a ton of different mortals show up, and been less believable. It was confusing that she didn't comment on all of the witch costumes around her and ask how a microwave cauldron works. It made no sense that she snapped her fingers and started flying with a broom that she somehow effortlessly took out of Hilda's grip. I liked that there was a potion for waking someone up after they fainted, but it did feel a bit too convenient. It would have made more sense if they simply pointed at her to wake her up. Maybe that potion was being sold at the garage sale, so that's why it was right there. Archie's Girls 324. Sabrina's been studying witchcraft a lot, and she got a B+ in her studies. And she holds up a paper saying Hex Tech. Normally I'd assume she's being homeschooled in witchcraft, because that worked perfectly fine for most of the series. But those words imply that she gets her report cards for witchcraft from a magic school. Hilda says that to reward her, she went through the trouble of buying her a portable cassette player and cassettes. That means a lot because she could have zapped them up for free. Of course there's a catch. All the cassettes are just more incantations to memorize. Everything's Archie issue 106. Hilda says a photo of her cousin brings back fond memories, and it's been years since she spoke to her over the crystal ball. Sabrina says she should do it right now, and Hilda agrees, not knowing why she hasn't called her more often. Despite the fact that she's calling her out of the blue, her cousin's immediately happy and calls her dearie, and she miraculously remembers right what she was talking about the last time she talked to her, like she's got photographic memory, and picks up from there. Hilda remembers why she didn't call her much, and it's because she talks too much. What does she even mean when she says she finally got all of her spring incantations out of the way? I guess she just means spring cleaning, but with magic. I hate when writers have the words blah 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 wasting valuable space in the text bubbles. She and her husband are looking to make some potions for friends of theirs. That's nice of them. Why is Sabrina smiling at this? I guess she thinks it's amusing because Hilda's getting what she deserves for wanting Sabrina to be evil. Pep 389. Hilda tells Sabrina there's an emergency meeting of all senior witches. I wish I knew why. That'd require more effort to think up. So she says that Sarah wants Sabrina to look after her daughter Esmeralda while she's gone. First of all, I don't remember Esmeralda's mom being named Sarah in the 70s comic. If she was, it wasn't memorable because that's not a typical witch name. Second, this looks nothing like Esmeralda. Where's her black hair? I don't know why she dyed it. And why is Sabrina being expected to babysit her and not anyone else in the family, which must be full of members considering how long witches live? Sabrina complains that tonight is talent night at the school and she wanted to go all evening, rather than casually agreeing to watch her because all she'll have to do is freeze her in time as soon as they'll leave to go there anyways. And she even knows that Esmeralda's evil. It's not like it's the first time she met her, and so she's naive and wants to keep giving her second chances, rather than be mean. There's a million different spells she could cast to make this easy on her. Even if she thinks freezing her in time is too mean, why would it be too mean to magically make her nice? Hilda tells Sabrina to take Esmeralda. Somehow, she thinks she'll behave. Esmeralda speaks surprisingly formally. I don't know if that's establishing another character trait for her for once, or if she's just talking like this to seem more innocent. But either way, why is she even bothering to lie to her? Someone introduces Sabrina, the next contestant, and she's gonna sing and play a medley of love songs. She plays on the piano, and based on her lyrics, Esmeralda decides to use magic to have her get splashed with liquid. Everyone would find it very strange that the container of liquid that looks like a beer one just jumped onto Sabrina. And I've already read a story where magic happened based on what Sabrina said because of her family members trying to sabotage her. But this came first. Here it's even more annoying because it's Esmeralda doing it instead of her well-intentioned aunts. It's kind of boring to see the same kind of plot point as Rock and Rigmarole did. Sabrina says out loud that if she could only see Esmeralda, she'd hex her. Why would she need to see her to hex her? Since when is that a rule? The audience would hear her say that and she'd know it. Maybe they assume it's a part of the act. And the writer even having her say that she could hex her just makes the plot hole obvious to everybody. At least have the stories where she's babysitting take place on a day where she's out of magic every time. Because that'd actually justify the story, even if it'd still be aggravating. Sabrina doesn't want to give Esmeralda the satisfaction by quitting, and waste time trying to sing again. So she gets turned upside down, and someone wonders how Sabrina did that trick, and someone thankfully smiles while saying that she did it with wires. The guy who announced her says he didn't expect anything like that in her act, as he fortunately helps her up. She sings again, and a big broken heart shows up. The audience laughs at the pun, and she runs after Esmeralda, cathartically calling her a demon. Go figure, she's told she did the best comedy magic act ever, and she wins first prize. I love that they were self-aware enough to call it comedy. She didn't earn the prize legitimately by playing music and singing, but it's so cathartic to see this after Esmeralda tried to humiliate her. Sabrina gets money and candy and agrees that Esmeralda got her that victory. She doesn't know whether to give her a good thrashing or the box of candy. So the story actually ends with her doing both. It's shocking to see Sabrina spank her because these days it's frowned upon. But considering how much she frustrated Sabrina and how people who bother her always become the victim of her temper, it's not hard to understand. Esmeralda's a jerk, so it's good writing to not have her be a Karma Houdini for once. And what's really valuable is that at the same time, Esmeralda says she likes the creamy centers of the candy and the caramels are delicious. So it's at least making an effort to offset this with levity and comedy. So it becomes a dark comedy rather than just jarringly dark. I'd still prefer to see her use magic to humiliate Esmeralda though. This story was about Sabrina having to babysit Esmeralda for an arbitrary reason. Instead of simply freezing her in time or making her nice, she just trusts her to be with her when she's competing in the talent show. And the girl uses magic based on what she sings, but this causes her to win, a trophy that she doesn't really earn. This is like in Rock and Rigmarole, but slightly different, and with a jarring ending. Laugh Comic 378. Hilda gets upset at Zelda sweeping the floor with her favorite broom. But that is what brooms are for. Otherwise, why does it have that thing at the bottom of it for sweeping? Hilda's appalled that Zelda uses the same broom for flying and sweeping because that's not like a witch, apparently. I can't help but think of the time in the 70s comic where Hilda got really mad at Jughead for using her favorite broom with the racing stripe to sweep. Eventually, Hilda calls Zelda cheap. I'd expect it to be the other way around with 70s Hilda because she's always lecturing on what you should do, even if it's bad advice. So she thinks she's responsible by protecting the family from Della. Sabrina doesn't want them to quarrel, and Hilda somehow insists that she ruined her broom when of course it's only dirty. Zelda tells her to go fly through a thundercloud and wash it off because she's annoyed. Or someone could use magic to instantly clean it. Hilda says she doesn't ride on filthy brooms instead of doing that for some reason. Sabrina offers to buy her a new broom from the mall. Instead of getting told, "What kind of a witch are you?" and told to just zap a new broom up for free, Hilda's actually nice and says that'd be great. She also makes the reckless decision to tell her to get one with a little pizzazz, when that'd just risk her getting a broom she doesn't like because she's used to brooms looking a certain way and she's a stereotypical witch. And I keep being told about brooms that are special because they're magical and they have specific parts in them, like in the 70s cartoon. So once she wants a magic broom instead of a normal one, Sabrina drives in her car to the mall. So she can drive. She just barely does it because Harvey does it all the time and she can fly. Why didn't she fly to the mall? It'd be faster. She wastes time reminding us of what we already know about her aunts as people and smartly decides to try to find the shoes she wants while she's here. She doesn't have to spend the money after all because she hates those shoes, and eventually, she finds a broom at a store called Bentley's and decides to give it a test flight while no one's looking. I guess any security camera footage of this was erased by a spying witch. She then sees some nicer brooms and puts the old one back. Then a kid pretends to be a cowboy and tries to ride the old broom, but Sabrina forgot to remove the spell on it and it starts flying. This just causes his mom to tell him to come down from there when based on what he's saying, if he could, he would. She should be more freaked out and confused. And you'd think that a magic broom would only go where you want it to go and not move the minute you tell it to stop moving. And it's not like she's used to magic because she's a witch, because then she would have just pointed to make the broom stop moving and fly straight to her. The store owner just tells him to come back with that broom instead of wondering how in the world this is possible. I guess this means he's a warlock, because he's used to this and just not using magic because he's used to hiding it in public. But wouldn't he assume that if the broom was magical on its own, if he pointed at it to make it do a safe landing, they'd assume the broom was doing that on its own, not because of him? Sabrina takes the spell off the broom and it makes him fall in a fountain, fortunately. He could have easily landed on something hard and gotten hurt. She could have just frozen or reversed time, teleported onto the floor, and of course erase people's memories of this. The kid's mom just gets mad at him and wants to tell his father about this. I love his snarky reaction. "You're gonna tell him I flew a broom around the mall?" So the writer is actually self-aware of how silly she is. I feel sorry for him. The story ends with a store owner calling Acme Broom Company to say there's something weird about the brooms he got. I love that it's called Acme like it's Wile E. Coyote. But he should know that nobody's gonna believe him about this. This story was about Sabrina getting sent to buy a new broom for Hilda because of Hilda making an unrealistically big deal out of Zelda getting her favorite broom dirty by sweeping with it. It occurs to me that she could have just used magic to clean it instantly. And somehow nobody points this out, and she just says it was ruined for getting dirty. Zelda's finally got a new personality trait because she's established to be cheap, which I'd expect of Hilda instead at this point with these comics. Being cheap makes sense if you can just zap up stuff for free. In Little Sabrina, Zelda's a ditz, but here she's finally smart. Why didn't Sabrina just use magic to create a new broom on the spot? Why wasn't she told to do that? The whole plot could have easily been avoided. Instead, she tries out a new broom in the store when no one's looking, even though she could still be looked at or gawked at with a security camera at any moment. But she didn't remember to take the spell off, so a kid tries to fool around with it and ends up flying. And Sabrina uses magic recklessly to save him in a way that could have easily just gotten him hurt because she's panicking too much to think of time spells. Or to think to simply slow the broom down and do a safe landing with it. The story didn't need to show us Sabrina driving to the mall and show us all of those panels of her until she found the first broom. That was the boring part of the story. But even that was kinda interesting because since when did she drive? Life with Archie, 237. Sabrina says she shouldn't go to school for days because of a cold. And realistically, Hilda does say she has a cure for the cold because she's a witch. I'm impressed. She hates the taste of the brew and asks what's in it, which she should know is a bad idea. She's told she has to drink 7 glasses a day. And the last panel has her getting her clothes on for school, and Hilda says she was right and it cured her really fast. But we're not told for sure how much time passed, so now I'm just confused. You'd think that if there was a witch cure for the cold, it'd cure it instantly while it's at it. So she must have been lying to her when she said she had to drink 7 glasses. Maybe it did something that doesn't matter that we can't tell, and she lied about what it did. She might have just been saying that to get her to go to school, but she could have just pointed and actually cured her. Maybe she thinks she isn't sick. For all we know, this is a depressing ending and she's still sick. Or she did cure her right away, I don't know. Betting me 134. Sabrina says she can make the trees talk and does so just to show off. One of the trees jokes making a pun by asking if she could make them bark. She shows off that she can make tomatoes talk and makes the grass talk too. When the grass acts mean to her because it hates being walked on, she calls it crabgrass for acting crabby. I liked that line. But she's not being very fair because all grass would hate being walked on. Archie's Girls 325. Sabrina makes a brew, says it's hard work, and wants to relax and go make a sandwich. And Salem looks confused because just like when she was making the brew, she's saying the ingredients out loud while making it. Maybe what she means is that she's gonna go relax after making a sandwich. I can't help but be annoyed that there's 2 Sabrina pages in Archie's Girls called Easy Does It, and they're so close together in time. Jughead 329. A little girl who looks insultingly nothing like Esmeralda is called that when she uncharacteristically asks how she could learn to be a good witch, even though she's a great evil witch. Hilda tells her to keep an eye on whatever Sabrina does and do the opposite. Archie and me, 140. Sabrina's aunts aren't sure they should let Sabrina visit a place because she heard bad things about some of the rockers there, even though they know that Sabrina can defend herself with her magic. So Zelda decides to check it out. While I'd expect her to hate it because she's old and not used to rock music, impressively she ends up liking the kids there because some of them have green hair like her.